America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation.
And I'm Janie Bowers, one of the producers of Main Street Matters.
And you can subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Today, we're joined by Patrick Duffy. He is the Business Retention and Expansion Manager for the city of Covington, Kentucky. He's heavily involved in the city's small business incentive program and keeping his thumb on the pulse of the needs of the dynamic businesses throughout Covington. In 2023, he worked with 12 businesses who either expanded their footprint or relocated to another location in Covington. And in 2022, he visited more than 140 unique businesses in the city. He's joining us today to talk about how he's helping small businesses thrive throughout a special grant program. Patrick, welcome to the show. Small businesses are what we live and breathe on a daily basis. So we're really excited to talk to you about what you're doing in Covington. So thanks so much for joining us.
Elaine and James, thank you.
Great. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you found yourself in this, what we see as a very important position for your city. And also what things that you're doing to help small businesses in the city.
I moved into the city of Covington in 2014. At that point in time, I was a lab technician, went back to school, and really tried to figure out a way to get into, I guess, what I would consider more classical business. And that led me to human resources. I was able to get a job with human resources at the city of Covington. At that point in time, there was a transition, as there is, every 4 to 6 years in local government. And we were trying to go in a little bit different directions in about 2018. So we started hiring several folks and building the economic development team. I think our economic development director, Tom West, realized that I'm someone that likes to stay busy. And they had an opening for business retention and expansion. So the fact that I lived here in Covington since 2014, I had a little bit of, I don't know what you call street cred or what, but I had some connections with some business owners. And once I was hired as the business retention and expansion specialist, my focus has been on not only the larger companies, but also the, mom and pop shops, as they're called, these folks that it's really a family business. And I just, in the past 3 years, I've just felt that I am growing with them. And we've navigated quite a few issues, but what I'm doing now is a lot of business retention visits, and sometimes they look a little different. Sometimes it's just stopping in, finding the owner, how are things, do you have any problems? Other times it's you sit down and you go through a list of questions and you really brainstorm on what would help that business. I'm pretty lucky in that Covington, of course, you may or may not know this, was named top 50 places to live by Money Magazine. But on top of that, I would say that this is one of the top places for entrepreneurs. We have a great resource list that goes everything from Small Business Development Center. There's the Aviator, which is a woman's accelerator. And there are several other partners that I could go on and on about that help our businesses in whatever they need. I try to stay in a little bit of a guardrailed area, but really connecting them to who they need to talk to, who is the subject matter expert. That's my role at this moment. And then I guess maybe about a year ago, the Small Business Incentive Program needed someone to run it, someone to fill out the paperwork, for lack of a better term, and to make sure that everything gets passed. So that's kind of how my journey to this and kind of why I'm in this role.
So what does the Small Business Incentive Program offer? If I'm a small business or I want to start a small business and I come to you for this program, what do I get and what kind of services do you provide?
It really depends. It depends on where you are as a business. It depends on if you own or lease the building. But basically, where I would start is the rent subsidy program. And that's great because it works for both new and existing businesses that are expanding. What it does is we reimburse their rent. All these programs are reimbursement based, but we reimburse half of their rent up to $500 for the first year. Now, if you're an existing business and say you've been in a building for 10 years and you move to a larger, at least 150% larger than your current space, then you are also eligible for that. So I know that with rent prices and everything, all the prices going up, what we wanted to do was ensure that when someone comes to Covington and has a business, they can worry about running their business. They can worry about doing the things that that their coaches are telling them, and they don't have to worry about rent as much. And as you guys know, typically that first year, even the first 2 years are the hardest. So we wanted to just take away a little bit of that pressure.
That's great. Is that funded by the city of Covington, or is that a state grant or a federal grant?
City of Covington, I don't know all the details other than the fact that we have $150,000 in our budget each year. And what we feel and what we've kind of with the data is that's a very small amount to help a lot of businesses, which of course then comes back as payroll taxes and successful businesses.
I read at the top that you visited 140 businesses in the city last year. What do you hear when you're sitting down with a small business owner as far as what their biggest challenges are, not just to expanding their businesses, hiring more people and getting bigger, but what are you hearing as far as like taxes and regulations, and even if it's not on the local level, but all the way up to the federal level? Like, how are some of those policies impacting your businesses in your area?
I've seen folks have a slightly easier time hiring. I know that was a problem in 2020, in that kind of right after that. The big thing right now is real estate prices, rent prices, or a combination of both. Now, I know that there are several businesses who are looking at purchasing, and they're trying to figure out the right time. And as far as from a federal standpoint, I'm not sure that we have too much connection. I know that, the big thing was ARPA. That helped us a lot, but that helped us in a different way. We already had the incentive program built into our budget. So with ARPA, the ARPA funds, we were able to expand, take a small bit of that and do some placemaking, some public art. And that all adds to what these businesses are seeing. If there's a nice mural somewhere, for example, and it's next to a business, I mean, those folks really appreciated that the placemaking was really a lot nicer. Other than that, the taxes are always an issue. We just kind of hope that our programs can help their bottom line, and that they're responsible enough to kind of take the money that we've used and use that to their benefit in another area.
You also have a program to maintain and restore historic buildings within the city. Tell us about that program.
Actually, this all started in the late 90s when the city of Covington had an awning repair program or an awning program. And I think that was probably to promote some walkability. But basically, we started this program as a city in 2017. Covington was much different back then. I know when I moved to Covington in 2014, the realtor not that I was working with, but another realtor said I was crazy for moving down there. We had a lot of blight. We had a lot of abandoned buildings. And you can kind of almost reverse that to where we are now. And every building that you see now has this high price on it. And so the other thing to know about Covington is that it's almost completely built out. We just built an industrial building. We didn't. A local developer built an industrial building. It's been the first to be built in Covington in decades. But back to what I was going to say, we have seen a lot of these business owners who were able to, prior to 2020, buy a building and try to do their best, but really the facade is the problem. And what people see with our facade reimbursement program, this program pays up to half of a building owner's project, up to $6,000 to improve everything that you can see from the street, the windows, the doors, paint. We do include signage in that, and there are a few other things that you can do interior-wise that will actually help your application. So all of our applications are scored in different ways. Our facade application is interesting in the fact that the more money that you put in the building, the higher the probability that you will get funded for this. So, over the past 7 or 8 years, we've seen a lot of really amazing transformations of these historic buildings. Covington is the second highest as far as the number of buildings on the historic registry in all of Kentucky. So what we want to do is we have a historic preservationist on staff, and we want to help these. We know they're not going to build a new building in that certain spot. Our code doesn't allow it. What we want to do is we want to help them get their vision to reality through this facade grant program.
Patrick, I'm just curious, when you're looking at businesses, are you focusing on either attracting or helping, new businesses with the program, or helping existing businesses? When you're thinking about that, are you focusing on specific industries or specific size business? What's your ideal business that you'd like to focus on, or is there no focus? It's just who qualifies?
So what you look at. Personally, I prefer to work with retail businesses. I know the way we shop has changed tremendously since 2020, but I do still believe that you can have all the restaurants and bars that you want, but there needs to be something to keep people there. And so my big focus has been really talking to these folks who have dreams of having a retail space or continuing the family business. But I will say the city is looking at the payroll, and what we've noticed is a lot of I think if you'd ask the city manager, we'd like to see a lot of law offices. That's very high payroll. But when I'm working with folks, typically we work with the smaller, probably less than 5 employee businesses. We do love those big fish. We do love those huge companies, those headquarters, and we do try to attract that. We have a business attraction manager on staff that focuses a huge amount on attracting these large corporations, these large headquarters. But what we believe is, and I think all of America should probably believe, is that these small businesses are critical to our economy, our local economy, but they also give us a story and an identity. And that's the big thing that I work with. I love to work with people who are passionate about what they do. There are certain industries, and I won't get into that they're looking for a dollar amount and that's it. What I love is when you have someone who has a product and they truly believe in themselves and they're passionate about it. And that's what's fulfilling to me, is to say you can get this money from us if you do the right thing. For instance, if you're doing a rent subsidy and you have a great business plan and you have worked with some of our resources here in town, those are the folks I'm really cheering for, because they're trying to do things the right way.
Sure. I have a couple of questions. What was Covington's traditional industry base? Like what, has Covington kind of made the switch, as a lot of kind of companies in the Midwest where it was industrial, it had some manufacturing, and now has switched to a service economy? What was kind of that transition to the current modern economy for Covington?
Boy, that I want to just say I'm sure we were heavily industrialized, considering that we're right across the river from Cincinnati. I know Cincinnati was a very industrial city. I know a lot of our buildings that are standing now are either part of or standing on the site of an old industrial building. We do have industry in Covington. Covington is an interesting map. It's very long and it kind of weaves in and out of other cities in Kenton County. And so we do have a lot of industry further south. And what I'm seeing closer to the river is exactly what you said, Jamie. It's that, service, retail, and basically when folks come to the riverfront, they are not coming to work as much as they are to enjoy, to play, and to enjoy the scenery. I do feel like we have had a lot of success in the past few years with our larger buildings are now becoming headquarters for smaller companies. And these companies look a lot different. These companies have the C-suite, maybe, for example, is in the office, or maybe the sales staff is in the office, but there are a lot of work from home folks who are also all over the nation. So as far as what we have, it is a great mix. The industry is still around. We have some folks near the river that do some industrial, and all along the railroad tracks we're zoned for industrial, but it's typically further south. And what you see further north is folks that want to work and play and live down in the urban setting.
Sure.
Patrick, tell us about the electric sign program.
Exciting, because that's fairly new. And if you've ever been to Covington, you will go down the street and see this sign that says Rich's Proper. And that's a really nice restaurant here in town. But the owner just took it upon himself to take the historic sign. Some of the pictures you see behind me are from 50s, 60s. And in the 50s and 60s, every single business on Madison Avenue had an electric sign. And it was lit up in the night. And it's pretty interesting. You can't see the picture now, but there's a picture of, 80 to 100 electric signs. What we want to do is bring back some of that history. And we're asking some of these businesses who have been here for a long time, if you have a building, a sign that's still on the side of your building and it's probably never worked for a decade or two, we want to encourage you to bring that sign back. If the company's changed, we don't want to tell you what to put on the sign. You can put a new company's name on the sign. But what we do want to see is a return to that neon, the neon lights and electrifying signs, because it's true. It lights up the night. People, not necessarily, they don't want to come to see the sign, but I think they feel a little safer when things are lit up, when things are bright, well maintained. We have recently worked with a business. They've been here at 150 years. It's a burger joint. And the old owner came to the new owner and said, I found this sign in the basement. Do you want it? So basically what I did was work with that business owner. He sent the sign off once it was approved, and he has a neon company and an electric company installing new hookups and everything. And so basically for his project and all electric sign projects, if it's historic sign, let's say around 50 years old, we will pay 75%, up to $7,500 for that company to give their building a facelift with a new bright sign. Recently, we had a gelato company. They were able to find some lamps from an Italian church, and they look very much like they're from a church. But what they did was they equipped it with modern LEDs that can be changed, and the colors can be changed. And they found a local electrician to install them, and honestly, it's added quite a bit to the storefront, especially at night.
Neat. That's really cool. Do you know, how unique is Covington into having your position and this attitude? Is this something you're seeing in other towns in Kentucky or Indiana or Ohio across the border, or are you kind of a unicorn?
Well, I'd like to think we're a little bit of a unicorn. I don't want to speak any poorly of our neighbors. I've seen a lot of the things we're doing in a different form in Cincinnati, so that's great because the whole region's kind of adopting a little bit more pedestrian friendly, a little bit more urban living friendly, a little bit more sustainable. I can't speak to our neighbors on each side, and I certainly think they're doing the right thing, but I think we're unique in a way because we really embrace just about everything in our history, and we embrace the idea that if you're a business owner and you've got what it takes and you've got a great idea, we want to support you. I don't think it makes great business sense to pick and choose, so we do let it grow organically, if you will. We love to hear. I recently heard not a complaint, but a business that was they've been in business for 5 or 6 years, and they're like, "Hey, there's nothing for me. I'm established, but I want to get in on some of this money." And my thought was, we have a couple resources, a couple state grants we can offer you, but talk to me, work with me. What does that look like? We are a very approachable city government as far as if someone has an issue, you're not just calling and you're not getting a voicemail and 4 weeks of no one talking to you. I don't know that we can always solve every problem that a business owner has, but I know we're here to listen. I know we're here to try, and we're here to give them some options and some answers. We love to work with business owners. I know I've heard at least from a few folks that are in different cities that we do have that more hands-on approach. So I think in a lot of ways Covington is a unicorn. At the same time, we are trying to work with other cities, and lately especially, I think all northern Kentucky counties are trying to unite a little more because right now Kentucky's just on fire in a good way. They've just seen a lot. They've just attracted a lot of business. We have a lot of great things here. We always say Covington's great because you get Covington prices with a view of Cincinnati for free. We just throw that in. We totally embrace the fact that we are next door neighbors to a large metropolitan city, and we really embrace it. And we try to change with the times rather than. One thing we never say is that's how things have always been done. And it's kind of tough because we always are changing and there's always addition. You got to add this, you got to add that. But I think that's what's made us successful is just being open and being that unicorn, as you mentioned.
Patrick, you are so passionate about Covington and small business owners. I wonder since you mentioned you weren't a small business owner previously, what do you think you've learned most about small business owners and entrepreneurs since you've been doing this job? Because I find them to be a unique breed.
Elaine, you couldn't have said it better, but I thought I knew a lot. I went to school and worked really hard to get an MBA, and I thought I knew it all. But that's not the same as actually running a business and being out there. And so what have I learned? It's a lot. I've always learned that, there's never enough money. Something always comes up, especially when you see like the pandemic. I don't think anyone really saw that happening, and it changed the economy. But what I saw with these business owners, and I love this, and I love learning this, is that they're very nimble, and they're always willing to change or try something new. I feel like another thing I've seen is if they have passion, and a small business has a passion, I would much rather pay money to someone that has a huge passion than to go to the big box stores. I know hiring's always a challenge, but I do feel like since we're somewhere where everyone wants to come, that's eased up a little bit. And the thing I've also learned about these business owners is that you really have to plan, and planning is very important. And I know that there's not a lot of time. I always envisioned if I was a business owner, that I would have a lot of time. I'll tell you what, I understand these folks. Time management is their number one skill. They seem to fit everything in, and they seem to always say yes to us when we have a question. I know there's a coffee shop here in town who they have a nice little meeting space. And so, I've seen a lot of these businesses pivoting and saying, we can really actually add more offerings. We were just serving coffee, but now we're going to add a little bit of a retail. Now we're going to have a little bit of lunch, because maybe sometimes people want to have a lunch meeting, and we want to be able to adjust. Other things that I've seen with it's amazing, but like the thrifting economy has really exploded, and I think these business owners are also totally different because they have this knowledge base that just no one knows, and they're able to make a living off of their knowledge of what their passion is. I think passion's a big thing. Passion's very important for running a business, and I never knew that. I just thought it's numbers, it's money in, money out. It's not that way all the time. You have to be able to pivot, you have to be able to be passionate, and you have to be able to understand that there will be a tomorrow, and that you have to keep trying. So, I could say a lot about a lot of different business owners, but they have just taught me so much.
It's funny you say that. I grew up in northern Indiana and in South Bend, Indiana. And right next door to South Bend is a town called Elkhart, Indiana. And Elkhart has a tremendous number of entrepreneurs, a lot of small businesses. They do a lot with the RV industry and small manufacturers and things. And I had, at one point in my career, I had been to a Chamber of Commerce meeting in South Bend, which was a lot of professionals who were employees, not necessarily business owners, but people who were lawyers or doctors and professionals. Whereas I went to the Elkhart Chamber of Commerce meeting, and it was all entrepreneurs who had started their own businesses. And even something as simple as, if you looked at them just without a photo of the two groups, you could tell the difference, because the Elkhart group had kind of the wild colored sport coats, and the South Bend guys were all in like navy blue suits, but the Elkhart guys were a lot more like cowboys. I mean, they just had a lot more individual personality, a lot of big personalities, and that seemed to be indicative of that kind of small business passion that you talked about. It came through just if you just looked at the room. Without really even talking to anybody, you could tell which one was filled with entrepreneurs and which one was not.
I think one interesting thing about Covington is that, and I usually tell this to folks when we're interviewing them, is my day is different every day. I can go from at 9 o'clock talking to a business owner with 2 employees that maybe takes home $30,000 a year. And then at 11 o'clock, I can be in a meeting with a CEO who's running like a Fortune 500 type company, and they are literally less than a mile away. It's so interesting, like you said, to your point, just this crashing of these folks that have been here forever and these folks that are new. And we're lucky because, we're pretty friendly here. It's kind of the beginning of the South, if you will, and there's still a lot of country folk here that are very friendly. I can't get over the fact that some of these partnerships that we have, it's just amazing. And some of the smaller business owners, I think they're kind of held and revered with some of these big corporate folks out of town. I know, especially with the bourbon industry, there's a gentleman in town that runs a vintage bourbon shop, and he offers a $5 if you want to try something, but he also offers those $1,000 bottles. And it's just so interesting in Covington when you have that whirlpool of different types of people. And I think that's part of our success.
Well, Patrick, tell us, we have a following of small business owners and individuals. Tell us where people can go to find out more about Covington and the kinds of programs that you offer that would incentivize small businesses to want to move to Covington.
The best way, we have a lot of projects going on. So we decided a few years ago, we need a standalone website. It's thecovky.gov. What we have there is the economic development website. You could still go to the city website, but thecovky.gov is going to tell those business owners exactly what they need. It's going to have information about available properties. It's going to have, in which we update a lot. It's going to have all of our incentives. There are some incentives that we didn't talk about. So if the company is larger, we have these job development incentives. And so if they're bringing a ton of jobs and a ton of let's just say corporate knowledge, we want to embrace that. We want to help them. And then, of course, we have a huge project. I think it's probably no secret, a 23-acre mixed-use development project going on. We also keep track of that because it's on the bottom of the webpage, and it tells daily updates on what's going on at that site. What are the new deals? Because we realize that maybe you won't qualify for the small business. Maybe you're a little larger. Well, there are opportunities here as well. So thecovky.gov is going to tell you everything you need to know if you're looking at the city of Covington.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I'll give that website again. It's thecovky.gov if you want to go and learn more about Covington and the incentives to move your small business there. Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Main Street Matters today, America's small business megaphone. And thanks to our audience for tuning in to listen. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. You can subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcast from. And we'll be back soon with another episode.